Welcome back to this week's episode of the Ohio Tech Report. I'm Chris Berry, one of your co-hosts. We want to thank our special guest co-host today, Paul DeForno from Deloitte. So, Paul, welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work at Deloitte.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Paul DeForno, Managing Director, helped to run the commerce practice here. We're the largest digital commerce practice in the world. And I'm based here in Columbus, Ohio. So big proponent of Ohio X and all things, building tech in Ohio. But we're focused on helping companies, digitally transform and drive commerce.
That's awesome. Well, we'll get started, Paul. So what we do, as you know, is we have kind of three stories. We'll do a lead one, but with the Ohio Tech Report presented by Zendesk, we're going to kick it off with our biggest one of this week. And it's really a year-long story that's been in the works and happening. And that's venture capital investment in Ohio has recently passed $2 billion for the first time. 66% of it, Paul, is in Columbus, where you and I both live. But what's kind of even more exciting, we passed this big milestone, but there's still a few more months left in the year.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing, this is kind of a snowball effect, multiple things happening, right? I think Ohio is rich for this growth and is just going to continue to grow because you have the great college system here that's driving the young, innovative minds. You have this unbelievable investment of tech. If you look at, Amazon building their data centers, Facebook building this data centers, that all of this is rich field. And by the way, people with the movement of COVID, the free flow of capital not in Silicon Valley is a big thing. And so I think all of these things are aligning perfectly well for Ohio and especially Central Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should have mentioned, but kind of another interesting nugget is, as we talked about, the milestone is passing $2 billion this year, but the previous total was actually last calendar year was 1.1 billion. So we've essentially doubled it in a year. And on top of that, we're almost up on that 2-year mark of COVID. And when it first came and there was that massive, really quick shutdown, and there was just so much uncertainty for those first few months. And then, as you mentioned, this resurgence, especially in places outside of the coast. It's happening in a lot of spots, but definitely Ohio, as we're seeing it with some of these stats. So I know we have some news this week, but that we'll get to in a second. But I'm really interested to see what happens the rest of the year. And it seems like every week or so, there's some really, really big funding announcements. And we'll get to a couple. The first one is a Cincinnati biopharma startup that they landed a $143 million round. Another one here in Columbus is Aware. They raised a $60 million Series C, and it's led by Goldman Sachs, one of their investment arms. And then there's another therapeutics, kind of a biotech play up in Cleveland, SPR Therapeutics. They closed a $37 million Series D funding. And so it's really cool. Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And at least two of them are in areas that the state's trying to do more of a focus in biotech, these kind of innovation districts around healthcare and innovation in the medical field. So it's really, really cool and fascinating to see what's happening in different parts.
Yeah, especially, we talk a lot about all the tech, more of the infotech ones. But if you look at all of the therapeutics and what's happening and the amount of money that's gone into all the research around these new vaccines and the related products, I think and mRNA, these new vaccines are completely new research, right? And I think, and what I've heard and read a lot about is we're just at the beginning. We're at not even day one. We're like first hour in those. And so they've been building all of this research for so long. And so now all of this different treatments that are going to be coming up is just going to blow our minds in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other is, you kind of mentioned with software and some of these other startups that, some of them you can start with 1 or 2 or 3 people. And, the joke is like in the garage, and there's those early days of Jeff Bezos in like a garage, or Steve Jobs and Apple doing the same thing. But these biotechs and some of the research in these areas, like, it takes a lot of capital, both, financial capital, the human capital, the scientists, the technologists, and more, I think we'll keep seeing. And again, that's really what the big bet the state is placing on these innovation districts, with places like Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital, and here in Columbus, Nationwide Children's, and Ohio State Wexner down in Cincinnati. UC Children's or University of Cincinnati Hospital, and then Cincinnati Children's, that they have these things, and those are the kind of the keynotes and the pillars of an economy and of a state that you just don't build those overnight. And that's the other area I find so exciting to see, when it's areas that we've long excelled in historically, but we're taking these new spins on it and kind of doing it in that next generation that you noted.
Yeah, because traditionally you've seen, we've done well in distribution, all the stuff that Cardinal Health and all its acquisitions have done, and they've gotten into more of some of the production side. But if you look at, you mentioned Children's, right? They had a spin-off here recently where they got a big investment round. So as you said, as opposed to just buying some laptops and some AWS instances, the therapeutics industry and all of that, they actually need to buy stuff to experiment, like, so
Right.
that those are actually capital intensive, and so they're not easy, so they really do need
Hmm.
the help of government and different investment areas, because those are a longer term investment to really play out, and usually they happen to work better in ecosystems like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll pivot now and kind
Sure.
of wrap up our 3 year big story, really, with all the different announcements. But I want to ask you, and kind of putting you on the spot, but the holiday season's coming up. You're Mr. Commerce. You're, work with traditional commerce, e-commerce, the intersection of the two. What are you looking at? What should the average consumer? What aren't we thinking about? But what's kind of exciting for you this upcoming year? And have you already started ordering your holiday gifts?
Yeah, I mean, buy your gifts now. If you haven't bought your gifts for your kid that is going to be in demand, you're out of luck, right? And so that's a lot of the challenge. And then what's interesting is a lot of this has actually come to the forefront as you saw President Biden bring together FedEx, UPS, and many others on how to like break the supply chain. And so it's actually come to the top of the media. But what would be interesting, my what I'm talking about to a lot of different people, in many ways I kind of joke that this holiday season, in many ways it's going to be, if you're a Star Wars fan, it's like it's like Revenge of the Empire, right? Like it's coming back because the big players who have these big investments, who can get around some of
Right.
these supply chain area, they're actually going to win more.
Yeah.
So Amazon, forever, when they were quote unquote losing money, guess what they were doing? They were actually building the last mile supply chain in all these areas to pay off now, right? And this year is the first year that Amazon is actually going to deliver more packages than FedEx,
Wow.
right? Which is unbelievable. And they predict that very soon they'll, by number of packages, they'll deliver more than UPS parcels, which is just unreal.
Yeah.
And so what we see is the Amazons, the Target, the Walmarts are actually going to take their unhealthy, or much more of a distribution of the sales versus what the smaller guys had been able to be nimble and move quickly, take advantage of in the past of some of the commerce stuff. But everybody's woken up to that.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and I love the revenge of the nerds, or
Yeah.
the big stuff. But this has been fantastic. I want to thank you, Paul. We also want to thank our presenting sponsor, Zendesk. And for those of you that aren't aware, Zendesk was built upon a simple idea: make customer service software that's easy to use and accessible to everyone. Their customer service and engagement products are powerful, flexible, and scale to meet the needs of any business. They serve businesses across so many industries, with more than 145,000 paid customers, and support in over 30 languages. They're HQ'd in San Francisco, operate worldwide, and we'll tag them below. You can learn more at zendesk.com. But Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sharing your insights on the upcoming holiday season and talking some of the biggest stories in Ohio tech this week. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.